The grave, and that's why I'm standing here today. It's a very, very meaningful song. Savior, He can move the mountains. Do you believe that? My God is mighty to save. He is mighty to save. You just sang an amazing truth. And so we're going to go back in history to one of the most beautiful women in the Bible. Stunning. Chosen out of maybe 50, 100 to be the king's wife. Stunning. Her name was Esther. She lived in what is in the newspaper every day, Iran, Iraq, that area. She was a captive. She was of the Jewish background. Her people had been subjugated. Israel had been wiped out. Enemies had come. The whole country had been taken over. And she or her parents, uncles, grandparents, whomever, had been taken back in captivity. So she was growing up in a foreign land. And she was young, probably as old as some of you girls. And she was stunningly beautiful. It says, charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but the woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. And Esther was a woman of external beauty and internal beauty. She feared the living God. She was a Jew. The Jewish faith, they would sit around mealtime. They would remember the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. So she was living her life quite happily. And under the circumstances, the king, kind of like Cinderella with the slipper, go find the most fairest, beautiful, whatever, in the kingdom. And she came on the radar. And so she was invited into the palace along with many others, and they spent a year getting ready. Long process, beauty treatments, lots of attention. Could have gone completely into vanity and self, but she didn't. She had an uncle named Mordecai. Mordecai, one of his favorite clothing was sackcloth, the things you put on buffaloes when it's winter time. He was a strange kind of man. He was a smart man, but he had a passion for his people. This is Mordecai, the uncle. Well, it was a wicked time on planet Earth. Imagine the most wicked person you can. In this story, we're going to call him Haman. Haman decided he did not like Mordecai because Mordecai refused to bow his knee to this not the prime minister, but number 2 in command, Haman. Mordecai said, I bow to the living God only. I don't bow to men. So Haman, a man of power, built gallows for Mordecai. His future would be hanging from a rope. That's what he wanted, because that man bothered him. And Haman's wife encouraged him. Haman's brothers encouraged him. His children encouraged him. He was an evil man. He hated the Jews. He hated the people of God's choice. Now Esther, don't tell anybody she's Jewish. That was a secret. She couldn't reveal that. And so after this 1-year beauty treatment, there was a little bit of a ramp walk perhaps, but the king said, I like Esther. Let her become queen. And so she did. She became elevated. Haman was distracted. So he put out a decree and to say, let's kill all the Jews. And the king was deceived and said, that's a good idea, put his stamp on it. And so this is where Mordecai comes in to Esther. And he says, Esther, today is the day you need to act. You need to make a decision. Because right now, if this Haman's plan goes through, then your people will be annihilated, including you. So Mordecai says this, the words are sent to Esther, said, do not imagine that you in the king's palace can escape any more than all the Jews. Just because you are in the royal palace, you will not escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place. God is the God who moves mountains. He is a savior. He can use you, Esther. If you don't want to participate, then he will choose somebody else. Goes on. You and your father's house will perish. This is serious. And who knows whether you have not attained royalty for such a time as this. This is your season. Maybe for some amazing reason, God handpicked you out of all the women of the kingdom and put you right next to the king so you can change his understanding of the situation. So Esther says, I need some time. Esther told them to reply to her uncle Mordecai. He says, go assemble all the Jews who are found in our area and fast for me. Stop eating food and get on your knees and talk to the living God. Do not eat or drink for 3 days. If you forgot to have breakfast this morning, sorry. 3 days, no food, no water. I and my maidens will do the same. We will fast in the same way, and then I will go and talk to the king. Notice she says, I'm not going to look even more beautiful. I'm not going to put on Humpty Sharma's 5-leg, dupat lenga, whatever that was. She didn't look to the external, she looked to the eternal. She looked to the internal. She looked to the God who made you and me. And it was a serious time. If she failed, well, it's a great story. Esther. I'm sure they've even done this play in this school. I just bring this up today because maybe for such a time as this, you are in Mount Carmel School. God does that. God takes you from wherever you were, whichever school you had been, whichever parents you have, and somehow you're here. Little ones, medium ones, big ones. You're here for such a time as this. Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your heart. God is a God of today. So Esther is not eating, she's not drinking, her friends are not doing that, the whole Jewish community is not doing that. This is serious. And maybe they would sing songs like this, that we just sang this morning. There's another one of my favorites, I couldn't resist. Come, let us sing for the joy of the Lord. Let us shout joyfully to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before his presence with thanksgiving. Let us shout joyfully to him with psalms, with songs. For the Lord is a great God and a great King above all gods, above Haman, above my husband king, above this nation. God is almighty. in whose hands are the depths of the earth, and the peaks of the mountains are also his. Nothing can escape. You cannot escape from the living God. He made you, he fashioned you, he loves you, and he's asking you today that this is the day that I have made. Rejoice and be glad in it. The sea is his, for it was he who made it, and his hands formed the dry land. That's your geography lesson for the day. Come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. For he is our God, and we are his people of his pasture, and the sheep of his hand. And this is the punchline for Mount Carmel School. Today, if you hear his voice, if you would hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. Do not say, oh, I'll do that tomorrow. Weekend aane wale hain. I'll do it on Sunday. Don't do that. If he's talking to you today, you listen to him. And Esther, she had to respond. She didn't say, I'll think about it. She thought about it through prayer and fasting. So I'm asking Mount Carmel to listen carefully. God is going to speak to you this year. He's going to talk to you today in your classrooms, through your teachers, through Mr. Williams, through staff, faculty, your parents, whatever it is. God has a message for you. Do not harden your heart if he's talking to you. What does harden your heart mean? If anybody is in art class, you know what happens to clay. If you let it get hard, you can't change it. But if it's soft and moldable, you can make all those snakes and animals and all these cool things. But it has to be soft. Your hearts have to be soft. And by singing these songs and worshiping, come, let us bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our God, our Maker. This is my appeal for you. I never did that till I was almost 19. Don't wait that long. Learn to worship the living God. He made you. He loves you. There's lots of examples of people who said no thank you in this Bible. Many people. For 40 years, the Jewish people said no, or it was actually one time they refused, and so God said, every one of you will not see the promise. But that's another story, another day. Esther is our hero this morning, a young woman who looked eternal and internal, not to the externals. Have a great day.